But I've also done a lot of work with daimai for PTSD
Uh-huh.
because of the fact that when you're under long-term adrenal stress, one of the things you do is curl the body in,
Mm-hmm.
and it pulls up the daimai.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if you're familiar with that pattern in the body, and if you have any insights into it, and also just anything else that's above and beyond the ordinary.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, I think the pattern, well, the way the pattern is described in the official PTSD terms, which obviously are not going to use daimai because they don't, it comes from the psychological world, is they talk about the psoas, that the psoas locks in. So the psoas
Exactly. Yeah.
contracts and therefore pulls on the daimai. But this, now you can say that the psoas is part of the daimai. You certainly can, I think it makes sense. But so I'm looking at the psoas as this, like separately from the daimai. I mean, the other thing is if you're looking at it from the Jeffrey UN model, if we should call it that, but we do. So you can say that in PTSD, there's just so much the person just puts it in the belt, in the pockets, and then it just well, it needs to be burst out, and either it does in some cases of PTSD or it doesn't. But there's just an overaccumulation. The person has taken on too much. So you're trying to, the metaphor is to release the daimai, to give some venting for all this accumulation of trauma, before they blow up themselves, or they internally combust constantly. So it makes sense. For me, what I do is I do look more at the psoas. So at that point, I'm looking at liver 4. Okay, and then the psoas will affect. And so in the Chinese model, it's the model of the zhang qi, of the pectoral qi, that has a relation to stomach 30, which is on the psoas. So the chest, because the chest also starts to contract. Okay, it's the same. It's kind of part of the same pool. Um, so yeah, looking at stomach 30 is important. And yes, so the dogma, yeah, it should be adrenal. In PTSD, it should be autonomic nervous system. But I agree with you that there is more to it. Now, the other way you can look at it with this contraction of the chest, if because you are more, you have a lot of connection with the Jeffrey style also, is to look at it as a Yang Ming posture. That's another option. And so with Yang Ming, since you're talking about Shen, of course, the stomach channel is full of, there's a lot of Shen issues in the stomach channel. But specifically, I would look at stomach 44, which is nating, and combine it with either do 24 or do 23. So do 24 is Shenting, the courtyard of the Shen. So this is where the courtyard is the place we meet the Shen, as opposed to the actual bedroom of the Shen. Okay, the Ting is like you go to the Ting to meet the emperor. You don't enter the emperor's house. You come to the little, it's like a courtyard garden sort of thing. So both of them have it's the courtyard to the inner stomach 44. By the way, they're both Sun Tzu Miao ghost points. Stomach 44 and do 23. Do 23, now I was talking about Shenting to 24, but it's hard to distinguish between 23. Do 23, the North Star, the upper star, is a ghost point, not do 24, but it's hard to distinguish between them because they're only half its own away. So that's something that's conceivable. And the other thing is that what happens in PTSD, besides the pull down on the daimai, is they don't have good action in the legs. So again, you're talking about, well, kidney channel, because we're back to this chwai, to the stomping, the ability to push down, to lift up. Okay, so in PTSD, what will happen is there'll be a pressing down. just falling down. So you talk about kidney points, either kidney 6 or kidney 7 or kidney 9, and you talk about inner yin in order to establish the perineal floor. And then you talk about the outer bladder points, bladder 42, 43, 44, to create more opportunities in the chest, and possibly bladder 49, needled upwards outside the spleen shoe, again to lift the ribs, so from this sinking that can happen. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. That's lovely. Those are some new insights. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, and then, the other thing is, and then at the end, I would consider sculpt. So even though I said, you can do like, do 23 or do 24 plus stomach, or is like a quote unquote, like a signature for an exorcism treatment. You're kind of declaring, I want this to be an exorcism treatment. Then you do what you do, say kidney 9, which is the guest house. So, I want to be able to occupy my own body and not have the ghosts occupy it, so to speak. You can add pericardium, for example. So in a case, you can say, Neguan, pericardium 6, since you went with Neiting, then you have the Neguan. But really, in this case, it will be more like to open the chest, because I don't have a great affinity for pericardium 6 otherwise. And whatever you do, and then you can end with gallbladder 34, which is Yangling Chuan, the mound, the fountain that is also a mound. So it's kind of like it's a burial ground. So what do you want to do with this entity that you're trying to exercise? You're trying to pull it out. So, you can do mox on gallbladder 34 if the assumption is, okay, we're going to burn it. You can do different things. You can take the needle and bury it. You can, flush it down the toilet if you want to flush the entity down the toilet, stuff like that. So, those are kind of options. But I would add, the skull points, besides do 23, 24, like, say, Sanja 22 or gallbladder 18, 17, 18 kind of area, that I would add at the end. Again, because I want to make sure that I'm not talking directly to the brain, and that I'm giving myself a chance to release patterns in the body first. Skull points with Shen disturbance are a little bit problematic, because you can get everything to look fine, because the brain's, you sort of, quote unquote, short-circuited the connection. You got the brain, but you didn't get the body. So the brain's going, oh, everything's fine. No pain anymore. Everything's good. But the body's still holding onto it. So if I use skull points and just address the brain too directly, I might miss the opportunity to address the body. So I will add the brain points at the end, even if I check them at the beginning, because I want to know what works. I want to know everything that works. So for example, if, say, inner yin, just for the sake of it, releases all the findings, it doesn't mean it's the only point I'll use. So I check all my other ideas first, then I will needle. So does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Right.
Do you work at all? Well, and I have extensive notes on this, but I'm just curious, do you work at all with the low vessels, with Jeffrey's low vessels?
No, okay. Yeah, unfortunately, I never got quite the resonance with either the low vessels nor the divergence.
Okay.
That are, it's like a big signature piece of Jeffrey's. And these are two things that I do 8 extras. That is something that I did get a resonance with, but neither the divergence nor the 7 starring or the bleeding of the lower vessels and with emotions, and these are supposed to be the untargeted emotions in the low vessels. Yeah, I've just never fully understood.
Okay.
It just never
Okay. Fair enough.
got there. So
Fair enough.
sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious from your experience. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. don't. I will say, because now I'm thinking of, well, using low points in general. Well, I mean, the spleen 4 is a low point. Okay, and it is a point that I will, and also don't forget the spleen 4 and stomach 30 have a connection because they're both Chong. So, but then it's hard to say, am I using spleen 4, for example, as a low point, or is it spleen 4 as a Chong point? Like what's really going on here? Um, and again, to emphasize the use of spleen, so it's not just autonomic nervous system, which autonomic nervous system, if you want to translate to channel, in a very dogmatic, like if I wanted one channel, primarily will be the Sanjiao. To some extent the pericardium, but primarily the Sanjiao, because the Sanjiao, first of all, it's the coordination of the 3 diaphragms, the 3 jiaos, but also the character jiao itself. Jiao is to burn, and it's written literally like a bird on top of the fire. Like, if you're the bird being roasted, you're gonna have anxiety. Okay, so jiao also means anxiety, not just burner. Okay,
Oh,
so
really? Huh.
yeah. So the association of Sanjiao with the autonomic nervous system, there is a reason why, we say Sanjiao 8 releases the SCM, releases the nervous system. That is like the first go-to, for the autonomic nervous system, less so the pericardium. Spleen and pericardium is a good combination, but it's also for things like anxiety, depression, and stuff. That comes from something a little bit different that in the Jeffrey model will be about the actual putting it into the blood. This is the spleen's role, because the spleen houses the yi, the intention, the thought process. So it's like, and this is in PTSD, it's a little complicated, because in PTSD you can say it has no thought process, it bypassed it. It really should be in the divergence, maybe in some manner, because it's something that came from the outside, and maybe even without my consciousness has become part of me in some cases. But if I'm disturbed by it, if I'm disturbed by any emotion, the spleen has to be involved. It's impossible, unlike the TCM world where the liver has to be involved. The spleen has to be involved, because without recognition, without the thought process, without the E, how can I be disturbed by anything? I will be like the orange guy who doesn't get disturbed by nothing. Well, actually, he's disturbed by everything. That's the wrong example. Sorry. But nothing would bother me, because if my spleen, if I'm not thinking about it, if I don't have a consciousness, awareness of it, which is the spleen, the E, then yeah, there's anger and it doesn't matter. I'm not bothered by it. There's fear. I'm not bothered by it. There's grief. I'm not bothered by it. I'm not conscious of it. It's the moment that I'm conscious of it. So it's putting it into the so-called blood. So that's why spleen and pericardium are really important to deal with in emotional issues also.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would have never thought of using divergent meridians, to think of it as toxin in the Jing. That's a very interesting thought.
Yeah, I'm surprised, because I would have thought that Jeffrey, again, because it's not my greatest resonance, I would have thought that this would be like the so-called bread and butter of many of the people in Jeffrey's milieu. But obviously I'm not involved. But I would say that, at the very, I will say this, that I've had success with one. This is many years ago, when I was really I was trying this out, and I did do the bladder divergent treatment on someone with some sort of childhood trauma, and it was it was quite not eloquent, but quite dramatic. Like, he came up with all these suddenly memories that he hadn't had for 34 years, from the suppression of childhood and stuff. So it's clear to me that there is something in it. I just haven't, the model is just a little too complicated for me, because on the one hand, we're bypassing the consciousness by communicating the outside world with the Jing, the way with the Jing. And on the other hand, then we can sort of have the emotions that we're associated with each organ that are quote unquote conscious emotions. So it's hard for me to sort of say, okay, so you do the bladder and the fear is the one that is the one I sort of got. All the other ones, I don't. So that's where I'm having problems. And the other thing is also to consider the possibility that releasing the neck is a way of working with is a divergent treatment in some ways.
Oh, I
So
think of that as being window of sky.
well, but all the divergence, the windows of the skies are created by the divergent connecting points also.
Huh.
So they're very similar in a way. I mean, it's not exactly a one-on-one, but you know, there's a so you know, so to give you another metaphor, when we say the sun jiao releases the nervous system, the sun jiao releases the neck, therefore releases the nervous system, I can say, well, the sun jiao 8 or the sun jiao 5 is actually a divergent meridian treatment. I don't know if that will be officially correct, according to whatever, but you know, because the sun jiao is what? The sun jiao is the thing that disseminates the yuan qi. So the sun jiao is the jing at some levels. And releasing the neck is the heaven, the outside influences. So, you know, there is that interesting connection there.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and again, you know, I don't want to create theories, but you know, it's just interesting to sort of like look at all these things and sort of go, oh, you know, this could go with this could, you know, with this concept. So, um, you know, it's a whole.
I create hybrids all the time, Avi.
Of
Like
course.
one of my standards for PTSD is to use Kiko's adrenal treatment, but then integrate Worsley's upper kidney points like spirit burial ground and all of that, and add those in together. And that's a hugely successful one and really important for opening the chest. Although I don't tend to add in P6 to that, but it's a really good idea.
So so you do adrenal, so you do say kidney 6 or kidney 7 with 27, then you add say kidney 24 on top of it,
Well, and
or
well,
instead of 27.
I'll do the choice of foot point, and then I'll do 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and then I'll continue up. I don't go right to kidney 27. I'll feel along the sternum, and
Mhm.
wherever it's either tender or feels empty or feels full, I will needle, particularly things like spirit storehouse and spirit burial ground, and then I'll finish with 27.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, you clearly spend time with Holly Guzman.
Oh, I did not get that from Holly. That was
Oh,
just something
that's weird.
I came up with on my own.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But
No, no.
I did do some work with Holly when I did my hours for my doctorate. I did work with Holly. She's one of the few people around that are still practicing that's senior to me.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. It's getting as we get older, it's getting hard to get to older more senior people, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's
So
true.
I did observation with her for almost a year.
Oh, okay. Because Holly had, so it's interesting, this thing with the adrenals and the 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock below kidney 16.
Uh-huh.
That's definitely a Hollyism.
Oh, I
Um,
did not know that.
yeah, this is not. So I think originally, from the Kiko perspective, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock was a reflex. Just below kidney 16 was a reflex for adrenal. And which, by the way, does not show as much nowadays, and you get a lot more kidney 2 pressure pain instead. And what happened was, and occasionally she would needle it also, but primarily it was, you know, the kidney 6 and 27. Holly is the one who kind of pushed the idea of needling 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock also much more strongly. And a fair amount of people from Santa Cruz from, say, the 90s still seem to still do that. That's why I would. And Holly was
Uh,
another one who sort of felt that kidney 27 was not necessarily the that it could have been 25, 26, there could have been another upper kidney point. The thing, so just from a theoretical perspective or from an intellectual stimulation perspective, so to look at the fact that, so the kidney channel, this is not to argue yes or no for any protocol, because any protocol that works, whether they work for a particular person because of their intention or whether they just work, it's irrelevant for me. But just to give you some more ideologies, so to speak. So we're going to assume that PTSD has to do with fear, okay, just for the sake of dogma, and fear has to do with the kidney. Now, so the kidney channel goes, it starts at the little toe, it goes, circles the ankle, goes in the inside of the thigh, goes into the perineal floor. And then there's a big confusion because the text, the description of the channel is it goes up the front of the spine and then moves down towards the bladder and then up towards the chest, circles the throat. The points, on the other hand, from kidney 10, it goes to kidney 11, up to kidney 16, up to kidney 27, and it makes absolutely no sense because that's not the description of the path of the channel. The path of the channel is it goes up the front of the spine to do 4, and then goes down to the bladder, which suggests that it goes from kidney 10, the next point is so-called kidney 16. And then from kidney 16, it goes down to kidney 15, 14, 13, 12, 11. And then another branch, and it literally says another branch in the description. Another branch goes from kidney, what we call kidney 16, Huangshu, up to the chest. Okay, so if you're taking the text description, then, which you in some ways don't have a choice, because what are we going to do? Decide that the text is wrong? We could, but we're claiming that we believe the text. So at kidney 16, one channel goes down towards the pubic bone to home to a bone, which is what the kidney is supposed to do. It also homes into the ankle bone, right? And then it comes up and homes to the hyoid bone. So it homes to 2 bones that are horizontal. Okay, so it's kind of an interesting thing also. So one channel goes from kidney 16 down to the pubic bone. One channel goes from kidney 16 up to the hyoid. Now, that when there's fear, the channel splits. And then what does fear do? It sinks. Then the lower channel just sinks, and that's why you get this reflex below kidney 16, just below where the channel got split. And that's why you have that 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock pressure pain. Okay, that's supposed to show on adrenal. That was the original indication for adrenal treatment. Of course, history. But so that's that's the thing. Now, the other thing to look at, so you have 2 shoe points on the kidney channel, which are normally on the bladder channel. There are some shoe points like shoulder shoe and stuff on the small intestine meridian, but basically all the shoe points are on the bladder channel because they're shoe points. And then you have shoe points, things that transport, that move us. One is Wang Shu, kidney 16, and one is kidney 27, Shu Fu. Okay, the shoe points for the Fu organs. Now, if you are going to resolve emotions, your Fu better be, the Fu organs better be open, because how on earth are the emotions going to flow if the Fu are blocked? Mm-hmm. There has to be an opening. And Huangshu, Wang you can say is like the hidden or whatever. It's something that's been buried in the body. Okay, literally the character means Wang, means to bury, or to hide or something like that. Also to dead, and over the flesh character. So these are the 2 shoe points that are outside the bladder. So that's why, so yes, it makes sense to sort of, if you're trying to create a movement, a transformation, a transition, You want to make, you want to do it with kidney 16 and kidney 27 with the fu, and the idea of the shu of transporting, of transforming, and with the idea of taking what's secret, hidden in the body, and making it move through the fu so that it can come out. So I don't know if that was how well that relates to PTSD, but since we're on that subject of
Very interesting.
coordinating it,
Yeah. Well, and it's just that it gives me new ideas to work with.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And then,
there are several new concepts there.
yeah,
So
and
thank you.
yeah, and then there's another one more. Is Bulang, the last point on the kidney channel that's below the rib, that's kind of level with Ren 15, 14. Which would make a lot more sense as a Chong point, if you're looking at it that way. But it's the dark corridor. It's like the place where the kidney, again, it's homing into a bone, into the ribs. And again, that's a point that might be useful. Maybe to needle, maybe not, but just to look at releasing, because that is a diaphragm point. It's on the diaphragm. So how much constriction there is in the diaphragm in PTSD.
Well, and from a medical qigong perspective, they would call that the inner court area, which is where we not only store old stress from this lifetime, but possibly old karmic stress as well.
Okay, so that might
That's
be
interesting. That's
yeah,
an interesting thought.
yeah. It's a point that I use a lot if I'm doing Chong treatments. That will be, that will be, so I'll do spleen 4, stomach 30, kidney 16, kidney 22, kidney 27, and then I'll give an outlet with Ren 15, which is a low point for the Ren, and not spleen, pericardium 6. Really not so much because it's the couple of the Chong, but because as a way to open the chest.
Can you say those points again? It was very, very quick.
For the Chong? Oh, yeah.
No, you said spleen 4, stomach 40.
No, stomach 30.
30. Oh, of course.
Chong. Chongy.
It was
Stomach
so
30.
fast.
Yeah,
Say it
sorry.
again.
Spleen 4, stomach 30 toward needle 45 degrees towards the center. Kidney 16, 45 degrees towards the center. I'm painting the Chong sort of thing. Kidney 22 towards the center. Kidney 27 towards the center. Then I'm doing Ren 15 downwards because it's the lower of the Ren, so to give some ventilation. Then I'm adding pericardium 6 to open the chest. And at that point, I am needling it upwards towards the chest. Normally, I personally needle pericardium with the flow of the channel, but in this case, I'm needling it up towards the chest and trying to get a feeling, just manipulating the needle very evenly, very lightly. And for many people, they can feel like air or water flowing up the arm towards the elbow. Okay, some people, it can go all the way to the chest, but those are very sensitive people. That's unusual. And then if I then feel I want to do, there's something more I happen to want to do, I might open up the daima. I might actually do gallbladder 26 because, some people, when they're coming in touch with their own Chong, my own blueprint, it kind of creates a lot of conflict. So you better open up more, vent out the belt, open up that belt a little bit more. But that's pretty much directly from Jeffrey, as far as I know.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you.
So that's why the kidney 22 comes up. But it's just that it is a chest, it has to do with diaphragmatic constriction also. So it's kind of like almost the other side of the psoas. It's a reflection of the psoas. If the psoas sits down here and the diaphragm is up here, they're connected. I mean, they're obviously connected to do4 also, around do4 also, because the psoas itself, the psoas and the diaphragm meet. They affect each other.
And you said, Avi, that treatment also for diaphragmatic constriction?
Oh, well, sometimes that treatment, that's what quote unquote a Chong treatment. So when a person basically has, so I would arrive at that treatment from a state, it will start with a statement of the patient that somehow evokes for me, and then I ask questions and make sure that they concur, that it resonates for them too. That it's something like, I am not happy with the so-called blueprint of my life. In other words, I was given this life to live in this current century, this current culture, with this kind of body, and this isn't. I have a conflict with it. It doesn't work for me. Okay, so that's the Chong is the one's blueprint, so to speak. So it's when a person has an issue around that, and they feel that they're not in they're not in resonance with the original blueprint of what their life was supposed to be like from pre-heaven. Okay, then I start looking at that, and what I'll do is I'll make sure that these points, or let's say at least spleen 4, releases a fair amount of the abdomen. In other words, I happen not to do this theoretically. I want to see some changes in the body, because that's the way I work. I'm not good enough to be able to say, oh yeah, your pulse changed when I did this treatment. If you can do it that way, that's fine. And that's certainly the way Jeffrey would do it. I mean, Jeffrey was also able to diagnose from the pulse that it's a Chong problem. I don't have this capacity. So I'm palpating abdomen and neck, and then I'm going, okay, I'm thinking it's a Chong issue. Let me see how much, say, spleen 4, how much, say, stomach 30 are going to release for that person. And if it releases a large number of reflexes, or all of them, I'm going, okay, this is a decent treatment for them. And I do it. And I usually explain to them, and I explain to them, when I do these treatments, I talk to them about each point, the name of the point, and what I'm thinking it means. You know, so it's a little bit like a Dharma talk, so they have something to sort of lie down there with their, with the imagery of whatever it evokes for them. And go through whatever the psychotherapeutic process is for them. They're usually fairly, quote unquote, deep treatments. People really, you know, they go into a deeper space than regular acupuncture treatments. You know, it's like, you know, mentally. It's very rare that you do this treatment on someone. In fact, it's never happened to me. And the person says, oh, wow, I was constantly bothered by the whatever fly on the wall or whatever it is. They usually come out and say, wow, I spoke to my dead grandmother, or, you know, something like, you know, they have some sort of out of the ordinary kind of mental experiences, you know, deep meditational experiences, usually.
Mm-hmm.
That's my experience.
Thank you. Did all of that make sense, Mary Jo? Because we were flying around with about four different, you know, schools of thought, and
Yes.
is there
Yeah.
anything?
Just the points you had mentioned earlier, Camille. Spirit, I hadn't said, you know, the upper kidney.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying a number of spirit points. So
I think they're 24 and 25. But
yeah.
I'm not sure. I'd have to check on
Well,
the names.
20.
Kidney 24 and 25. One is spirit burial, and one is spirit court.
Storehouse.
Storehouse, okay.
There's 3. Well, what I'm looking at, there's 23, 24, and 25. Is that right?
Okay. Do you know what I would look it up, and I'll let you know, because off the top of my head I'm not sure.
Spirit ruin, and
Right.
Burial.
That's the same as spirit burial ground.
Burial, okay. And the other one, the 25 is spirit storehouse.
Okay. And so what was 23? Spirit what?
Spirit seal.
Spirit seal. Okay.
To be
I
honest, I just palpate all up the sternum, and wherever it feels gummy or empty or just doesn't feel right, I needle it, um,
Mm.
and not necessarily bilaterally. I just go to
Mm,
wherever it feels like it needs something.
cool.
Yeah.
It's just what I've done. It's just I just made it up.
No, that's cool. And the other thing I was going to say, and you could always, especially since if you're a good Jeffrey person, you can always decide that these points, might deserve essential oil.
Very much so. Yep.
I mean, because that would really resonate. It seems to me that would really resonate. And then because sometimes you kind of feel, well, I want to be a bit more purist, and I'm doing kidney 27. Should I be doing the points below or something? You can go through all of that. It's just like, sometimes when we want to do more than one point on a meridian, one more of one of the 5 shoe points, the element
Uh-huh.
points on a meridian, then I would do moxa on one of them, to avoid the needle, as if the moxa is not activating the point the same way or something like that. So, by doing an essential oil, you can sort of avoid the notion of, oh, I'm doing too much. This point will compete with 27 or something. So that's an option.
And speaking of essential oils, he also does a lot with essential oils on the Great Low.
Lane 21, you mean?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Although for him, there's a 3 soon area.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks that it extends all the way from spleen 21 to gallbladder 22. And
Yeah.
so he has several essential oil protocols for that. The most purging one is Litsea and myrrh, Litsea.
Mm-hmm.
And you just put a few drops, you spread it on the area on both sides. And usually it's very interesting. I've seen this a number of times. The person will have incredibly revealing dreams, not necessarily the first night, usually the second night.
Mm-hmm.
And the dreams just bring out the trauma tremendously in a very purging way. And then 2 other protocols, well, actually 3 different possibilities. If the person is deficient and really needs to build themselves up in order to purge the Great Low, he would use rose or carrot seed or parsley seed.
So something that nourishes blood.
Exactly. The
Uh-huh.
idea that they don't have the blood to release the low.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, exactly.
And the
Exactly.
third, you
I
said there's
also,
a
by the
third
way,
protocol?
have a list of, if it's of interest, maybe you said you don't resonate with low vessels, but maybe Mary Jo, you're interested. I have a list of the essential oils that he uses for both deficiency and excess of the Great Low, and I'd be happy to send that out.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I actually resonate with when you said he uses spleen 21 all the way through gallbladder 22. I tend to think that gallbladder 22 is a much more interesting point than spleen 21.
Well, so does he.
Much more.
So does he.
See, I'm a good student of Jeffrey's. I come up with these things on my own.
Yeah. Yeah.
He trained me well. So
Well, and he says that in some books he thinks that it really should be gallbladder 22 and not spleen 21 at all.
yeah, that would be my feeling, because I think gallbladder 22, besides, I mean, of course, by names you can say just spleen 21 is a very interesting point, but gallbladder 22, is much more interesting, but also location-wise, it's just much more powerful. It controls the chest a hell of a lot more, as far as I can tell, than this thing 6th sun below that I don't even have a. Gallbladder 22 I can find physically. It has a physicality to it. Spleen 21 I can't find anything physical there. I mean, I don't
Well,
see the
and
landmark except a 6th sun below, or whatever it is.
I think I
Whoops, you
think it's
hold on, Camille.
very
Oh, bummer.
pivotal for
Camille, can you stop for a second
the
because you're not coming across well?
lasting of
Oh,
the chest.
unfortunately, you're not. Something in your connection must be very slow, or something, or something on
Yes.
Zoom. Oh,
What's wrong?
good. Okay, if you can repeat everything you just said, we didn't hear a word.
Okay, I'm not sure where I lost you because you asked me to stop talking and I wasn't even talking.
Oh, oh, it sounded like you
So
were
I
talking
don't.
was very metallic.
Okay. Well, the 2 points I made was that I think gallbladder 22 is important for the collapsing of the chest in
Mhm.
PTSD.
Yeah.
And then what was the other thing that I said? I don't.
Talked about spleen 21.
It was something about an essential oil. I thought. I don't know. I think it doesn't matter.
We'll figure it out next week.
And
No,
when
this
you,
has been very interesting. Thank you. I appreciate this very much because it's nice to have new perspectives. So
Cool.
thank you.
Good. Well,
Do
thank
you
you.
have any other questions, Mary Jo, about what we've discussed? Because it just, I mean, it was flying for me. So I don't know how you experienced what we've discussed.
yeah, well, some of the concepts, I suppose I haven't studied myself in depth. Yes, but yeah, so some of the things, the treatments, Abby, I would have been familiar from your previous things you had said before, different workshops,
Yeah.
the Kiko treatments and that. But I was just wondering, when you use the essential oils, are you just massaging a little of the oil into the point? Is that?
I would. Different people use it many different ways. And Camille's much more familiar with Jeffrey's way of doing it recently. So, Camille, what would you say?
Well, he does. When you do the gallbladder 22, spleen 21, he's asking you to do the broad area because there's 3 soon difference between them. But for the most part, he's doing the oils on specific points, and that was what I was when I was mentioning that book that you can get from Brandon Horn. One day when the mail opens up again. He's got a lot of protocols in that. And then also the other way that he uses essential oils is to augment when he has treatment protocols that need to be done frequently. For example, anything that has to do with the Jing, be it 8 extra channels or divergent meridians, are supposed to be done 3 days on, 3 days off. So since the patient isn't going to be coming into your office 3 days in a row, what he would do is, he would have you, perhaps do the treatment 1 day a week, and then you send them home with essential oils, and they would put oil on the points on the following 2 days.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn.
All right. So Mary Jo, if there is, it's like, I think it's a 2-hour video that I have on Jeffrey Ewan basic concepts. And it is on YouTube, so it is confusing because Jeffrey does, quote unquote, have his own language. So, sometimes it takes a while to get used to, it's like when you see two people who study with Jeffrey talk to each other, it's like they're talking their own language. they're in a world of their own, sort of thing. So that's why there is that video that basically gives you most of that lingo.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
That's nice. I'll take a look at that too.
Yeah,
Because, one of my main takeaways from working with Holly is the extent to which 2 people can study with the same mentors and do things in completely different ways.
Yes.
We were constantly shocked. That's the way you do that treatment? oh, I do it so differently. You know, I mean, practically every day I worked with her, that would happen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, people have different personalities and different needs and different capacities, and we each have to create it. You know, we have to make it ours.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, you start with, well, first of all, you know, you start with the idea they said to do X, Y, and Z, or they even showed you X, Y, and Z, because many teachers don't show you; they just tell you. And then you do X, Y, and Z according to the best recollection that you have of it. And then you discover that, well, actually, X1 is kind of more comfortable, and Y2 is really much better, and you know, and it just becomes something different, and it has to be that way.
And the teachers evolved too, and she and I studied in different eras. So even though they were the same people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. There's no, and also, you know, everybody has different clinical setups. You know, so it's just gonna, you know, people who see, say, 4 or 5 people an hour are going to develop the same protocol very differently than somebody who sees one person. You know,
Good
it's
point.
just, it can't be, you know, you just can't do it this way. So it's always going to evolve and be different. And then 100 years from now, they'll say, oh yeah, and Jeffrey said blah, blah, blah. And somebody will say, actually, we can't find that anywhere. How the hell did you decide that? So, but anyway, so anything else before we end?
No, I think very interesting today. Thank you.
All right,
Yeah,
dear.
this was
All right, well, we'll talk next week.
okay. Thank
All
you
right,
so much,
thank
Avi.
you.
Thank you, Mary Jo.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.